At the edge of the galactic spaceport, where the shiny ships of 100 alien species rested in perfect rows, a rusty, clunky ship stood like a broken toy no one wanted to play with. Its metal was scratched, its color faded, and patches covered. Its belly like a tired old blanket, and when the crew of 4 humans walked out in front of it, everyone turned to stare, some pointing, some laughing, and a few shaking their heads in disbelief, because in a place full of sleek, glowing spacecraft, the human ship looked more like flying junk from a scrapyard than anything that could make it to orbit. Yet Captain Lena smiled anyway, her eyes full of quiet confidence as she held her chin high, not bothered by the whispers or the jokes. Sam, the ship's engineer, adjusted his toolkit and gave a small shrug, while Mira, who loved the stars more than anything, pulled her hood up to block the laughter, and Doc, a calm and serious AI specialist, simply recorded everything silently. They had named their ship Hopebringer, and while others saw rust, they saw purpose, because they had spent years building it from scratch, finding parts in old depots, fixing them one by one, studying alien tech manuals late into the night, and dreaming of the day they would finally reach the stars. So when the time came to test the engine, Lena gave the signal, and Sam turned the lever slowly, almost lovingly, and the ship rumbled to life with a deep, odd hum that felt more alive than mechanical. Curious engineers gathered, still amused, expecting sparks or failure, maybe even an explosion. But instead, the ship began to glow with a soft blue light under its base, something no one expected, and one alien engineer, a tall one with green spots and 6 arms, leaned in and said, "That's impossible. This ship doesn't even have a core stabilizer." But Lena didn't respond. She was too focused, hands on the controls as the ship started to lift into the air with surprising smoothness. Then, in an instant, it vanished, not just visually, but from all senses, as if it had never been there at all. Alarms blared across the port, scanners whirred, and officers scrambled to find any trace of the human vessel. But it was gone, completely gone, like a ghost into the void. Meanwhile, inside the ship, Lena and her crew were speechless, not because something had gone wrong, but because something had gone very right. The stars outside the window weren't the same as before. Space had changed, and the usual feeling of drifting was replaced by a tunnel of light and symbols gently circling the ship. Sam stared at the readings and whispered, "We didn't build this," and Mira leaned closer to the glass, eyes wide as she whispered, "I think the ship did this on its own." And Doc, after scanning the walls and core, said, "The ship is using technology far beyond what we added. Something was hidden inside, something ancient." And for a long moment, no one spoke because outside, the tunnel twisted like a dream made of math and time. And every part of them knew that they had entered something far bigger than a test flight. They had triggered a secret. Just then, a quiet hum filled the cabin, different from the engine's voice, more like a whisper in their minds. And then a soft voice spoke, not theirs, not the AI they had installed, but a new voice entirely, warm and echoing from deep within. "The ship. Welcome back, commanders. System reactivation begins," and every crew member turned slowly, staring at the glowing console, now pulsing with colors they didn't recognize. And Mira asked, her voice trembling, "What does it mean? Back?" But the ship only responded with one soft sound, a heartbeat. Inside the ship called Hopebringer, silence filled the air after the strange voice had spoken, and the crew of 4 stood frozen, staring at the glowing lights and shifting walls that no longer looked like the simple metal they had welded together back on Earth, because something deep within the ship had awakened. Something old and powerful that none of them understood. Lena, still sitting in the captain's chair, gripped the armrests tightly, her mind racing as she tried to figure out what was happening, while Sam leaned over the console, tapping buttons and reading the changing numbers that made no sense at all, numbers that moved too quickly. too perfectly, and showed no limits or errors, only smooth patterns like waves or breathing. And Mira, with her eyes fixed on the swirling light tunnel outside, whispered, "We're not in normal space anymore." Her voice quiet but full of wonder, while Doc, the AI specialist, scanned every system in the ship using his tablet, trying to find where the new voice had come from. But the deeper he looked, the more confused he became, because the voice wasn't coming from one place. It was everywhere, in the walls, in the power lines, even in the air around them, like the ship itself was alive. Outside the window, the tunnel stretched endlessly forward, glowing with soft blue and white streams, and symbols floated along the walls. Circles, triangles, shapes that seemed to shimmer and change as they watched. And though none of the crew had ever seen them before, something about those symbols felt familiar, like a memory just out of reach, and Lena said, almost to herself, "I think the ship knows where it's going." And right then, the ship gently turned on its own, tilting, slightly like it had chosen a path, and the tunnel of light began to widen, growing larger until it opened into a vast dark space filled with floating objects that didn't look like ships or planets, but giant machines, towers, and glowing rings, all completely still, all bathed in a soft silver-blue light that looked like moonlight from a dream. They had arrived somewhere far beyond any star map, somewhere untouched and unknown, and as they drifted forward, the ship slowed down and spoke again in that same calm voice. "Arrival confirmed. Hidden sector activated. Primary system scanning in progress." And then one of the floating rings began to spin, slow at first, then faster and faster, until a beam of light connected it to the ship, and for a moment the entire cabin was filled with a sound like distant thunder underwater, deep and steady, making their bones vibrate softly. Sam gripped the sides of the console and said, "That's not from our power core. We didn't build anything that could do that." And Doc added, "It's not just activating something, it's waking something." And then, right in front of the main control panel, a hidden compartment opened, revealing a new interface none of them had ever seen, smooth and silver with lights that moved like ripples on water. And when Lena reached out and touched it, the ship's lights turned golden for just a second, and the voice returned, saying, "Human contact confirmed, command authority granted, energy memory unlocked." And before anyone could ask what that meant, the screen displayed an image of the Hopebringer, only it didn't look like their version at all. It looked newer, smoother, stronger, and it was flying in formation with dozens of other ships that looked just like it, all moving together across the stars, like a fleet on a mission. And underneath the image were words: Fleet Class, Arc Ships, Purpose, Restoration, Commanders, Human Pattern. "Status! Reactivation Phase 1!" And Mira gasped, her hands covering her mouth, because that meant their ship was never just a ship. It was one of many, built for something important, and it had been waiting for humans to return and activate it again. And that idea made the room feel heavier, like they had stepped into the middle of a secret story, too big to understand all at once. Outside, one of the machine towers lit up, sending another pulse of light toward the Hopebringer, and the ship responded by shifting again, its metal plates moving gently as if remembering a different shape, and new panels slid open, revealing tools and devices none of the crew had installed, including a long, glowing rod near the floor that began to hover slowly, spinning in midair, projecting a map of the galaxy. Only this map was different from any they had seen before, with parts of it dark and hidden, while other parts pulsed with golden light. The voice explained, "You have re-entered the origin path. The memory core is incomplete. You must recover the lost fragments." And Lena, still trying to stay calm, asked, "Fragments of what?" And the answer came instantly, "Of us. Of you. Of what was lost before the silence." and the word silence echoed through the room, not as sound, but as a feeling, cold, empty, and full of something ancient and sad. The crew stood still, listening, and then Doc spoke. "The ship is trying to remember, but it needs us to help it." And Mira, eyes still wide, pointed at one of the glowing towers outside, saying, "I think that's where we start." And so they followed the map, carefully steering the ship toward the closest tower, which hovered above a planet with no name, covered in swirling clouds and smooth, pale oceans that glowed faintly in the dark. As they approached, the ship slowed again and lowered a platform from its underside. A small shuttle no one had ever seen before, and without a word, the crew boarded it, nervous but ready, and as the shuttle detached, the Hopebringer spoke once. "More, energy core dormant, reactivation possible, human presence required," and the descent began. The clouds parted slowly, revealing strange glowing shapes under the water and land, made of silver stone, smooth and untouched by time. And when they landed, the air outside shimmered slightly, but was warm and breathable. And the moment they stepped out, the ground beneath them lit up with their footsteps, pale blue like the ship's tunnel, guiding them forward through a quiet valley filled with soft hums and the distant sound of moving gears. As they followed the glowing path, a large doorway appeared in a hill, and it opened with a low sigh as if welcoming them home. And inside they found rows of machines shaped like trees, humming softly, and in the center of the room, a pedestal, waited, empty. But when Lena placed her hand on it, the machines lit up, and the ship's voice spoke again, louder now. "Core pulse recovered. First memory fragment located." And above the pedestal an image formed, a city in space, floating peacefully, surrounded by other Ark ships, filled with human voices and laughter and music, and then silence, total silence, as the city flickered out and was gone. The voice was quiet now, almost sad. The silence came, they were lost. "You are the return." And none of them spoke for a long time, because they all understood now. This journey wasn't about testing a ship. It was about waking something long buried, something that needed them, and only them, because humans had built it long ago, and only humans could bring it back. As they returned to the Hopebringer, the ship glowed brighter, as if it had gained strength from the memory, and more of its systems activated, showing more maps, more towers, and more fragments to find. Sam whispered, "This ship isn't rusty anymore." And Lena replied, "It was never just a ship, it was a key." And above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the galaxy itself had noticed that something long forgotten was finally coming back to life. The crew stood quietly inside the Hopebringer, feeling the hum of energy pulsing softly through the floor, a rhythm that was not mechanical, but almost alive, as if the ship now had a heartbeat of its own. And while the outside of the vessel still showed its rusty plates and welded patches, the inside was changing before their eyes. Walls that had once been dull were now glowing with soft patterns, and control panels they had built themselves were gently sliding away, replaced by smooth silver surfaces with lights that moved like water. Lena sat in the captain's chair, no longer trying to control the ship, but simply watching and listening, because the ship no longer needed steering. It moved with purpose, as if it had remembered something important, something that had been sleeping inside for a long time, and now that memory was slowly waking up. Sam stood beside a newly opened panel, eyes wide as he examined tools and instruments he knew they had never installed. Strange rods that floated in place, glowing lines that responded to his hands, and coils of metal that seemed to shift shape when touched, and he whispered to himself, "This tech is way beyond anything we've ever seen," while Mira stood near the front window, her eyes fixed on the dark space outside, where the floating towers and glowing rings of the hidden sector now shimmered more brightly, as if they too had noticed the ship's awakening, and Doc quietly scanned the systems. His screen showing codes and data he could barely understand, all of it flowing fast and smooth, like the ship was thinking, learning, remembering. And then the voice returned, stronger and clearer this time, no longer just calm but filled with quiet authority, saying, "Stage 2 complete, interface unlocked. Welcome Arc-class command crew, full awakening begins now." And the moment those words echoed through the ship, something changed. The lights flickered, the air grew warmer, and the floor shifted slightly beneath their feet, not in a violent way, but in a smooth movement that felt like the ship was standing up after a long sleep, stretching muscles it hadn't used in ages, and all around them, hidden parts of the ship began to open. Hatches in the walls, panels in the floor, and even parts of the ceiling slowly peeled back to reveal new shapes and devices. Near the center of the ship a platform rose, and on it a sphere of light formed, spinning slowly, showing images none of them had seen before. Visions of Earth long ago, of humans working together in great cities in space, of ships like the Hopebringer flying in perfect lines toward glowing stars. And then it showed something else, something darker. A sudden storm of shadows, flashes of empty silence, and then the ships disappearing, the cities going dark, and the stars turning cold, and the voice said, "Memory restored. The silence erased the first path, but the design remains. You are the new spark." And Mira turned away from the window, her face pale, asking, "What was the silence?" And the voice responded, "Not death, not war, something worse, a forgetting, a loss of purpose. Only the Ark ship survived, waiting for the right hands to return." And Lena asked quietly, "Why us? Why humans?" And the answer came quickly, "Because you created us, and only your pattern can wake us again." And suddenly the crew understood. They had not discovered an alien machine. They had returned to something their own ancestors had made, something left behind during a time no one remembered, something designed to outlive even the deepest silence. The Hopebringer was not just a lucky ship. It was part of a plan, a message in a bottle, sent through time to find its builders once more. And now that message was unfolding, piece by piece, inside the minds and hands of Lena, Sam, Mira, and Doc. Outside the ship, the towers began to light up one by one, sending beams of light toward the Hopebringer, not as an attack, but as a welcome. And the ship responded by glowing brighter, rising slightly in space without engines, like it was now, connected to the machines around it in a way the crew didn't need to control. The central sphere changed again, this time showing a map of the galaxy, but not just stars. This map showed hidden gates, lost stations and sleeping ships, all scattered across deep space, each marked with a soft golden glow. And the voice said, "You must find the others, awaken them. Together the Ark fleet will restore what was broken." And Lena looked at her crew, knowing what that meant. They were no longer explorers. They were now the first of something greater, something that had waited quietly for generations. Sam walked over to the engine room, and what he found made him stop in his tracks. Everything was different, the old coils and wires replaced with smooth energy cores that pulsed with a soft blue light, and the readouts showed power levels far beyond what their own design could handle. And on the wall above the main drive, a new symbol had appeared, a ring with 3 lines passing through it, glowing softly, and as he reached out to touch it, it spun gently, sending a pulse through the entire ship that made the walls shift again. In the main hall, new seats formed, designed not for comfort but for function, and as each crew member sat down, the ship responded, panels lighting up, controls rising to meet their hands, and voices speaking softly, guiding them in ways that felt more like memories returning than instructions being given. Doc discovered a room filled with storage pods, each labeled in an ancient version of Earth's language, and when one of them opened, it revealed a floating cube that lit up and spoke. Cultural memory, Sector 9, preservation mode, stable. And he realized that the ship didn't just carry tools. It carried history, songs, books, images, and knowledge once thought lost. And now it was ready to share it again. Mira found a chamber near the front of the ship with windows that looked out into space but also showed overlays of patterns and energy flows. And as she stood there, the view shifted, revealing hidden pathways in the stars, trails of movement, invisible to normal senses, and she whispered, "These are old star routes, shortcuts that haven't existed for ages." And the ship replied, "They still exist, for those who remember how to see them." And all the while, Lena remained in the captain's chair, watching as her ship, once broken and laughed at, now stood taller than any vessel in the galaxy, not by size, but by purpose. And she felt a deep sense of awe, mixed with quiet fear, because the journey ahead was no longer about proving humans belonged among the stars. It was about waking an ancient mission and carrying it forward, one memory at a time. Just as she thought this, the ship turned slightly on its own, facing a new direction, and the voice said, "First destination set. Next arc site located. Prepare for departure." And all around them the stars seemed to shift, opening a path. Through the dark, not a tunnel this time, but a smooth road made of light and memory, and Lena gave the smallest nod, whispering, "Let's bring them back." And with that, the Hope-Bringer began to move, silent and strong, no longer a rusty ship, but the first light of something powerful, something ancient, and something very, very human. The Hope-Bringer moved silently through the dark space, its old metal shell still scarred from Earth's scrapyard, but now glowing softly with light from deep within. And as the stars shifted outside the windows, the crew sat quietly in their seats, each one feeling the strange mix of fear and wonder growing stronger in their hearts, because they all knew that the next step was not just a mission. It was a test, one the ship had not explained yet, and maybe one it couldn't fully explain at all. Lena sat in the captain's chair, her hands gripping the armrests as the soft voice of the ship filled the room once again, saying, "Approaching Arcsite 2, initiating challenge phase." And those last two words sent a chill through the crew, even though the voice remained calm and steady, because they knew this place wasn't just another memory or ancient station. It was something designed to test the worth of those who arrived, something built long ago by minds that had trusted no one easily, not even their own creators. Outside, a dark sphere appeared floating quietly in the middle of empty space, not spinning, not glowing, just perfectly still. And unlike the shining rings or silver towers they had seen before, this one looked like a shadow made solid, and as the ship slowed near it, the lights on board dimmed slightly, like the very presence of the sphere was pulling energy from the world around it. Mira leaned closer to the window, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "There's no light reflecting off it. It's absorbing everything." And Sam nodded, running checks on the power levels, which were dropping slowly but steadily, as if the closer they got, the more the ship had to fight just to stay powered, and Doc scanned the readings, frowning deeply as he read the results. "It's not just darkness, it's interference, like it's trying to erase us." And the voice of the Hope-Bringer confirmed it, saying, "This is the trial of presence. Only the true pattern may pass. Others will fade." And Lena sat up straighter, asking, "What kind of trial is this?" But no answer came, only silence, and then with a sudden pulse the sphere opened, not with noise or light, but with a ripple, like a drop falling into a pool, and a pathway formed from the ship to the center of the sphere, made of smooth black stone that shimmered faintly with stars trapped inside it. And without speaking, the crew stood up and made their way to the lower deck, where the boarding ramp had already lowered itself. And the moment they stepped outside, they felt it, the strange weight in the air, not heavy like gravity, but like a memory pressing down on them, making their minds feel slower, their thoughts harder to hold. The pathway stretched ahead of them, surrounded by nothing but blackness on every side, and though they were still inside their suits, they heard faint whispers through their comms, soft voices speaking words they didn't understand. And Mira said, I think this place is talking to us." And Sam replied, "No, not to us, to the ship, through us." And as they stepped forward, the stars inside the pathway began to glow with each footstep, showing brief flashes of faces, cities and ancient skies, but they vanished the moment anyone looked too closely. After walking for what felt like hours, they reached the center of the sphere, where a small platform waited, and above it hovered a cube of pure white light, spinning slowly and sending out waves that made their hearts beat faster and slower, like their bodies couldn't decide what rhythm to follow. And then the voice returned, not from the ship, but from the platform itself, saying, "One must stand alone. One must face the memory. Only truth will awaken the core." And the crew looked at each other, unsure who should go, but Lena stepped forward without hesitation, whispering, "I'm the captain. This is my risk." And as she stepped onto the platform, the light surrounded her, and she vanished from sight. Inside the light, Lena saw not stars or machines, but Earth, her childhood home, her old street, her father's smile, her mother's voice, and for a moment she forgot she was in space, forgot the ship, forgot everything, because the light was showing her what she had buried deep inside. And then the scene changed, showing her the scrapyard, the failed launches, the mocking laughs of those who had called their ship a waste of time. And finally, it showed her the moment the Hope-Bringer first activated, and the voice spoke gently. "Do you believe in what you became, or do you still carry the doubt of others?" And she felt the weight of those memories pressing against her, trying to make her step back, trying to make her say it had all been luck. But instead she said, "I believe we were meant to find this. We didn't build it alone, but we woke it for a reason." And the light pulsed brighter, and the voice said, "Truth confirmed. Pattern accepted. Core access granted." And Lena fell forward, landing gently on the floor of the ship, gasping for air as the others rushed to her side. And the Hope-Bringer lit up once more, stronger than before, its inner lights turning gold for the first time as the voice announced, "Test complete. First core fully awakened. Power capacity increased. Navigation range extended." And Doc, checking the ship's systems, saw that hundreds of locked files were now open, showing star paths, lost Ark ships, and deep instructions written in the original human code from centuries ago. As they returned to the command deck, the screen showed the sphere slowly folding in on itself, turning into a beam of light that flowed into the Hope-Bringer's engines, and Mira whispered, "It gave us part of itself, like a gift." And the ship replied, "You carry the memory now. You are the living code." And as those words echoed, the entire ship vibrated once, softly but deeply, and a new path appeared ahead, a long spiral of light leading to the edge of known space marked only by one word, next. And they knew the test was not the end, but only the beginning. Because whatever was waiting out there, whatever the Ark fleet had left behind, would not simply hand over its secrets. It would ask the crew to prove they were still worthy, not just by what they knew, but by who they were. And as the Hope-Bringer moved forward once more, no longer uncertain, no longer doubted, it carried within its hull not just old parts and human dreams, but something much older and deeper, a purpose born in forgotten stars, and now rising again, one test at a time. The Hope-Bringer glided silently through a deep corridor of stars, its metal skin still rough and patched, but glowing now with golden lines that pulsed like veins, each light a reminder of the first core they had awakened. And the crew moved quietly through the ship, each step guided by both excitement and quiet dread, because the voice had given them their next destination, a place marked only as the Council in the ancient data, and the map showed it far, beyond normal space, past the last known star routes, hidden inside a storm of shifting signals that no normal ship could survive. As they drew closer, the stars themselves seemed to bend, twisting into strange spirals that made the sensors stutter and flicker. And Doc muttered under his breath that they were entering an area where time might not move in a straight line, where thoughts could echo before they were spoken. And Mira gripped her seat tighter, watching patterns form in the windows that were not just stars but shapes, circles within circles, each one spinning like a message too old to read. And suddenly the Hopebringer slowed on its own, the engines dimming without command, and the ship spoke in a voice that sounded more alert than ever. "Approaching Council Gate. Prepare for judgment. Identity scan in progress." And with those words, a massive shape appeared before them, not a station or planet, but a structure shaped like a wheel, turning slowly in the blackness, its surface carved with ancient marks that glowed faint blue. And at its center was an eye-shaped opening filled with shifting light, like a hole into another kind of space. Lena stood and faced the front, saying nothing, because she knew this was not just another trial. This was the Council, the part of the Ark fleet that had been left to decide who could carry the path forward and who would fail before even beginning. And as the ship passed into the spinning wheel, everything went still, the stars vanishing, the noise of the engines fading, even the crew's breathing feeling distant, and then the voice returned, not from the ship, but from all around them. Not loud, but deep and cold. "You carry the memory, you claim the pattern, but words are not proof. Let us see what you are." And the lights on the ship shut off all at once, plunging the crew into blackness, and then they each saw something different. Lena stood on a bridge of light, high above a broken earth, watching fires burn through cities while ships fled into the sky, and beside her stood a man made of stars, asking, "Would you have stayed behind to protect the weak, or left early to save yourself?" And she didn't speak, just stepped forward through the vision, saying, "The weak never asked to be saved, they only asked not to be forgotten." And the man nodded before vanishing. Sam stood in an empty lab, surrounded by machines, asking questions faster than he could answer, demanding blueprints, corrections, improvements, and he worked until his hands bled, the machines growing louder with each failure. But he kept going, not to win, but to learn. And at last, the machines fell, silent and faded. Mira floated in space with no suit, no ship, only silence, while shadows of her old crewmates passed by, whispering doubts in her ears, telling her she didn't belong, that she was only lucky, not skilled, and she screamed back, not in fear, but in defiance, saying, "I stayed because I believed, not because I was the best," and the silence cracked like glass. Doc found himself in a room full of children asking questions he couldn't answer, each one more urgent than the last. How do stars die? Where did the first humans go? What happens after the light fades? And he wanted to run, but he stayed, answering each one with honesty, even if all he could say was, "I don't know yet," and the room filled with light. Then all at once the visions ended, and the crew stood together again on the bridge of the Hopebringer, gasping and shaken but unbroken, and the Council spoke again, its voice softer now. "You are flawed, you are uncertain, but you are true. The path may continue," and the lights returned, brighter than ever, and the eye-shaped gate ahead opened fully, revealing a long stream of golden light leading away into deep space. A corridor not made of matter, but of memory and trust. And, as the ship moved forward, the Council spoke one last time. "Others have come before you, and all were lost. Not by force, but by forgetting. You must remember not only what we were, but why we began." And with those words, a new core unlocked within the ship, flooding the system with more data, maps, names, voices from centuries ago, even fragments of messages sent during the collapse, including one that made Lena go still. A voice matching her own grandmother's, speaking from a forgotten station, saying, "If anyone hears this, we believed in the Ark ships. We hoped someone would bring them back." And Lena whispered, "She was one of them." and Mira touched her shoulder, quietly saying, "Then this was always your path." And the ship confirmed it, unlocking a new area near the back of the hull where hidden chambers opened, revealing a seed vault, a human culture archive, and a sealed chamber marked only Soul Deck, which none of them understood yet, but knew must be something important for the journey ahead. The path from the council did not lead back into known space. It led deeper, toward the outer void where nothing had been mapped, where even the stars seemed younger, and the Hopebringer moved without hesitation, now carrying more than just 4 humans. It carried history, trust, and a promise made long ago, waiting to be answered not with power, but with truth. And far ahead, something massive waited in the dark, a shape hidden behind old signals, something the ship now marked as Final Gate. And though the crew did not know what it was, they knew the tests were not yet over, and the hardest challenge was still to come. The Hopebringer flew silently into the deepest part of space, far beyond anything mapped by humans or aliens, its engines glowing brighter than ever before, powered by the knowledge and energy it had gathered through each trial. And the crew stood at their posts, silent and focused, because ahead of them floated the Final Gate, a massive structure that looked like a shattered star held together by invisible threads, its pieces slowly spinning around a glowing center that pulsed like a heartbeat. And Lena, standing at the front, knew this was the last step, the moment when everything would either come together or fall apart. And as the ship drew closer, the voice of the Hopebringer returned, deeper than ever, saying, "Final protocol initiated, identity confirmed, legacy transfer in progress." And the gate began to spin faster, its light growing until it filled the entire view, and then, without warning, the ship was pulled forward, not with force, but as if time itself had opened, and the crew saw flashes of things that made their hearts race. Giant cities made of light, old battles between machines and shadows, children born inside stars, and ships like theirs flying together in perfect lines, then vanishing into dust. And the voice whispered, "You carry what they lost. You must now decide what is kept and what is left behind." And suddenly the Hopebringer stopped, not inside a gate, but inside a vast empty space with no stars, only one thing in the center, a broken planet wrapped in metal vines, glowing softly from cracks in its surface, and above it floated a massive sphere, like the one they had seen before, but 10 times larger, dark and pulsing slowly, as if alive. And the ship said, "This is the core of memory, the first arc. It holds all paths. It has been asleep since the collapse." And Mira whispered, "Are we waking it?" But the ship answered, "Only if it chooses to wake." And then the lights inside the Hopebringer dimmed, and something began to pull them forward. Not their bodies, but their thoughts, their memories. And the crew suddenly stood, not on the ship, but inside a strange space that looked like all places at once. The scrapyard where they built the ship, the bridge where they first launched, the ring of the council, the trial of presence, and even Earth, green and blue as it once was. And a voice spoke, not loud, but everywhere at once, saying, "You are the final echo. Why should the path continue?" And Lena stepped forward, answering simply, "Because we remember." And the voice asked, "What do you remember?" And she said, "That we were broken, laughed at, weak, but we never stopped trying." And the voice fell silent for a moment, then asked Sam, "What is your design?" And Sam said, "Hope, in pieces rebuilt." And it asked Mira, "What is your reason?" And she said, "To prove we belong, even if we don't look like heroes." And it asked Doc, "What is your fear?" And he said, "That we forget what made us human." And the voice pulsed once, then said, "Accepted." And in that moment, the core of memory awoke, not with noise or heat, but with light, brilliant and endless, stretching across space, like a signal too strong to hide. And the broken planet below began to shine as its vines retracted, revealing a city made of crystal and metal, once lost, now alive again, and the Hopebringer surged with power, lifting itself higher as systems across the ship unlocked fully for the first time, showing ancient technology hidden deep inside, and one panel displayed the final message from the Ark Fleet, long sealed until now. If anyone finds this, you are the future, not by strength, but by truth. We failed not because we were weak, but because we forgot why we began. Do not forget again. And as the message ended, the ship's hull shimmered, losing its rusted look and becoming smooth, bright, and almost new, though the crew knew it was still the same old ship that once sat broken in a junkyard, and they smiled because the truth was clear now. This rusty ship, built by hand, held together by belief, had done something no one thought was possible, and the galaxy knew it too, because signals began to appear on their scanners. Thousands of ships, all responding to the Hopebringer's awakening signal, some human, some alien, many damaged or adrift, but all turning toward the core, drawn by something they didn't fully understand, but felt deeply, a call, a memory, a chance to begin again, and Lena looked at the others and said, "We were the spark." And Doc nodded, replying, "And now they're coming to light the fire." And Sam checked the systems, finding a new protocol unlocked. Arkfleet. Beacon, capable of guiding ships across forgotten paths, and Mira opened the comms, her voice shaking but proud as she sent out the first message. "This is the Hopebringer. We are human. We remember. If you do too, come home." And the light spread farther, reaching stars that hadn't seen light in centuries, and deep in space, across ruins and silent worlds, something began to change. Not through war or weapons, but through hope, the kind built slowly, tested many times but never destroyed. And as the first wave of ships began to arrive, the Hopebringer hovered quietly, not as a weapon, but as a beacon, the rusty ship that changed everything. Not because it was strong, but because it refused to stay forgotten.